They call themselves a zero-day investor fund. What does that mean? Well, you have pre-seed, you have seed, A, B, C, D, E, right? And Antler really wants to invest in the team. So they are less interested in the idea. Of course, the idea has to work and they have to like it, but they're more interested in the core, the team. And this is why it's an 11-week process.
Welcome to the CTO Compass podcast. I'm your host, Mark Wormgoort, tech strategist and executive coach. In every episode, we meet tech leaders, from startup CTOs to enterprise CIOs, to explore what it means to lead in tech today. They share their stories and their lessons so that you can navigate your own journey in tech. Let's dive into today's episode. Hello, everyone. On today's episode of the CTO Compass podcast, we're talking to Mattia Peiretti. He's a techie turned founder, and he's on a mission right now to make finance effortless for entrepreneurs. He started in Antler and is now building PocketCFO, and he's learned what works and what doesn't when launching startups. Matt, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you for inviting me to this podcast, Mark. I'm very happy to be here. Hi, guys. I'm Matt, and techie from 3 years old, I would say. Started building, circuits together with my dad. I remember we built a stoplight with all different kinds of cables and whatnot, batteries, and it never stopped. From, as I told you, taking toys apart, and then that quickly evolved into software. Why? Because electronic components were expensive, and I had a laptop at home, so I could nerd out like that. And then, that was a whole world that opened for me. So I started in gaming, as most kids, but I actually liked writing games and not playing them, writing game engines, and that's where I started with C++. And then discovered the web around 14, 15-year-old. And that became commercial at a certain point. Started a marketing agency with a partner. And then we were doing all sorts of stuff that you wouldn't expect. We had a chemistry website for pupils in the Netherlands. And that got at a certain point thousands of clicks per month. And then I moved into launching my own technical agency. And we were building from data pipelines to, just software for companies, from the most boring booking system for hotels to a data pipeline that helped the researcher research annual temperature of Mars. And that was, I learned a lot from that. And then worked as a software engineer, led teams in a real estate tech company in Rotterdam. And since a little bit more than a year, again, back to entrepreneurship, building a company in finance, a AI-first proactive finance platform to help the SME market.
And that's so cool. So I want to go back to your childhood. You said you started tinkering with circuit boards when you were about 3 years old. I know you're tinkering with, I've seen a lot of people that tinker with electronics and stuff early on. You were tinkering with Arduino at 10, and you actually built your own game engine in C++ at 12. I think that's quite different from most of the stories that I hear. So why did you start with those things instead of just playing games or building a website?
Yeah, why did I start with those things? Well, I started, I think, from C++, which is quite unusual, I would say, as your first language, which is kind of a lie. I started with Lua, which is a game programming language from the 60s. Anyways, I didn't like that. And I moved to C++ because Arduino has this C-like language you play with. How did I get into Arduino? Well, my father was a musician. He's a musician. And he was always soldering his guitars and making his own guitars. And so I saw him playing with cables and this sort of stuff. And I think that's what caught my interest. And then, we would go to the electronics shop. My father always told me, hey, when you were a kid, you didn't want to go to the toy store. You wanted to go to the electronics shop. And there was one guy there who himself, he was pretty much of a genius, and he took me under his wing, and he would always give me challenges like, hey, I'm sure you can't get this done within a week. And then I would sort of not go to sleep, try everything I could, and I would go back to him just for the satisfaction of proving him wrong. And then I got into Arduino thanks to him, and I had this C knowledge. I wasn't that good at it. I remember the first time I opened Arduino, I typed in it, hey, dear Arduino, please make the lights turn on in language, in English. But that didn't work. And then I had to learn from the manual. But so I did. And at a certain moment, indeed, I was a kid, I was broke, didn't have money to buy expensive electronic components. And so I thought, hey, it would be cool to simulate the world, right? Let's build something that can simulate the world and where I can just write some code, which is cheap. I just need a laptop and 10 fingers and I can build whatever I want. And that is quite literally the definition of a game engine or a simulation engine. Yeah.
That is so cool. And then you've had all these childhood projects that you work on. You're now a CTO. You have your own startup, PocketCFO. What of your childhood projects actually shaped how you think about technology and how you build your business today?
Oh, this is a very good question. I think curiosity is one of the points that you learn about. I always dare to try something new, right? I think this is the recurring goal with tech. It's cliche because it's true. Much like in my childhood, where I would get annoyed or get frustrated because the way I was trying to get something done just wouldn't work. What I learned is, hey, let's really try to think out of the box. And what's a completely different approach to tech? And very often what you notice is you sort of end up on the same path, just from completely different starts. Every path leads to Rome, you know? And this helps in business as well. Hey, if you really get stuck, how can I go another way to end up in the same at the same goal? This helped me a lot, and I think the recurring thing that I got hooked on from my childhood was this flow state. A Hungarian writer described the flow state first, and it's basically, you can sit and hours go by, and it's dark outside, and it pretty much is the same for business, not just the tech side of things, but also how do I hack a people problem, or how do I hack a market problem, right? So this.
Getting into the flow state. So, and like you just said, you spent your childhood nights, weekends just working on tech stuff, and your parents were okay with that.
Apparently. Oh yeah. Fortunately, my father never felt like he had to be too strict about this, so that was very nice. And whenever I could, I brought also my hobbies into school. Fortunately, if you show a lot of passion, then whatever, if you have the strictest teacher, then they will still allow you to do stuff. And that's where I learned. I remember I made a project. It was like a domotic model of a house where you could control the whole house with an Arduino written in C, and even with a mobile app made with this MIT block programming tool. It was very cool. And there was a lot of long nights, even with some friends. So you had the collaborative aspect. And I think it was the first moment I also felt some leadership, like, hey, let's find guys that are interested in doing this. Let's bring them together. Let's share the knowledge I have. Let's see what knowledge they have, and how can we make this successful? And that was the only 11 I think the technology teacher ever gave in her career. So yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, and after that, still very young, you started digital media agencies. You started Phobos Media, Robin Hood Marketing.
Yeah.
What did you learn from those?
Oh, that's a very good question. Definitely how to deal with clients. So maybe I can tell you a little bit how my basically web dev career started, and then how that evolved into a marketing agency, and then a transactional tech agency. So I was hanging out in high school around here, and I had made some friends, and there was this person who was at this third failed business, and he was he's a social entrepreneur. He is the founder of Playground City, and the idea that they had was, let's take some naval containers, put a nice living room in it, and move them from neighborhood to neighborhood, such that elderly people could meet younger people. There was a lot of dynamic in the sociality of a neighborhood, right? How to bring people together, and they needed a website, so they had someone else make a website. It served its purpose, but they wanted a revamp, and so there was me, 16 years old, being paid 3-4 euros an hour, right? Having worked, remember, 100 hours on the website. It was a huge CSS file, everything with important. And that was my first lesson. Hey, how do you deal with a client? How do you word things in a certain way that keep the conversation productive, right? And those sort of things. And I think there was, after a little bit of time I did that, I thought, hey, I know so much. And then I realized that moving on, building two businesses, I knew so little, right? And that also sort of pushed me forward to try to learn more. But definitely dealing with clients, and also dealing with requirements which were not always clear. Definitely more in the Phobos Media side, which was more technical. And with the Robin Hood marketing side, I learned a lot about marketing. That was one of the reasons why I was particularly excited about starting that company, because I was more the kid sitting in the basement writing code the whole day, right? And I thought, hey, this is not sustainable. I want to get out there. I want to find new clients. I want to learn how to do that, how to do this. And so I started working with someone who was very well versed in SEO and SEA, search engine advertisement. And what was nice about how we built that business was that half of the products were in-house and half of the products were for clients. So it was a good mix between, hey, how do you build a company that builds products, and how do you then productize those products and sell them as services to clients. And so we would make websites and then campaigns on them. And I learned how to look at keywords, how to do SEO research, figure out how to even run a whole campaign, email marketing even, which we did from time to time. But then also how to build marketplaces. This is something that also came in handy at Pararius later. Pararius, also to be introduced, is the leading rental real estate marketplace in the Netherlands, right? Together with other labels, Treehouse, and then now we have Rent a Roof, Trois pour Toi, and this was all the experience I gained from Robinhood marketing became very handy there. But basically this, how do you make sure that your content is getting indexed? How do you make sure that even the content is really matching with what your audience wants? Search intent and all these sort of things. So from practical knowledge to even leadership lessons, because we started also working with freelancers. Robinhood marketing, and that became a bit boring at a certain point. I learned a lot, but it was a recurring theme. Landing page, marketplace. Hey, we need breadcrumbs, we need descriptions. You can do that only so many times, and so I decided, hey, it's time to go for something more transactional. How do we build really complex systems, which you can make everything very complex if you want to, but also what works really well for the client. How do you really solve the problem? So even we built something as basic as a booking system for a theater, social theater, but there was a complex system of stakeholders there. The government had to receive invites because they would sponsor the theater. So how do you build that? How do you make sure that people get invited at the right time? Orchestrating that was a gold mine of learning, basically. There.
Yeah. Nice. So, and you already said it, after those agencies, you joined Pararius, which in your career is the only, say, semi-corporate. It's not a full corporate, but it's a big company that you worked for.
On its way to corporate.
On its way to corporate.
Yeah.
I think it started as a startup, and like you said, they have a very big stake in the rental business in the Netherlands. What did you learn there? Because it's a very different type of company from the agencies you had before and the startup you're in now.
Definitely, yeah. So that was where I really made the switch from, hey, how to, because I didn't study at university, right? I'm completely self-taught in the tech side, and at a certain moment that became a limit. You could feel that it was a limit because you would speak with people that had more experience than you, and of course, experience isn't everything, but you need to have some sort of common ground you understand each other on, right? And that's what I gained from Pararius. That was really the pearl. And also hats off to basically Roel Bakker is now CTO of Pararius. I think he's doing a great job, but also the culture that was there. Engineering culture was always great. I think there was a very strive for quality, and they've had a lot of learnings. The company is 15 years old. If don't quote me on that, but I think it's 15 years old. And they had major rewrites. They learned a lot. It was a PHP company, which I didn't expect. I didn't expect to go into PHP, but it's a very fun language, and I learned a lot about architecture, but also not just the tech architecture, but the architecture of a team. So how do you solve a problem? It's not always solved by tech, but sometimes it's just solved by people that write that tech, right? And so that was the learning, and all the, if you want to go into specifics, domain-driven design, all the really, we did CQRS very well. I also learned the design patterns. I had a very great mentor where we would talk about these things, Gang of Four, and all this sort of academic, quote unquote, academic, or more, manual ways to look at code. And then that was the software engineering side. And when I then could manage my team, I learned a lot about that as well, leadership. So, started with authoritarian style of leadership, and then you learn very quickly that it doesn't work. And then move more towards facilitating, managing by walking, try to, keep people together and to make the underlying foundation work really well, such that people can feel like they're themselves, they can feel empowered, and then really dedicate themselves to the goal, right? And that was also golden learning from those 2 years.
Okay. So at Pararius, you had quite a broad role. It was technology, but there was more to it. Can you tell us about that one?
Well, this is the beauty of SMEs, right? It's not a large corporate where you're working on a tiny part of a tiny product that is internal and will never see the light of day. The software engineering team was 25 people back then. Now it grew a lot, but the beauty of it was you could be responsible for a feature from end to end, but also for the whole product. So at a certain moment, we thought, hey, our product should go more commercial. And then I had the opportunity to work together with marketing. I would make marketing suggestions. We made some improvements on some part of the existing software, which then were used for the whole company, just in our tiny part. And that was great because you get a lot of responsibility, which I think can make you grow quite fast. You, of course, give back a lot to the company as well. But by having that technological background, and also, this is the knowledge coming from Robinhood Marketing as well that helped out there, right? But having a technological background, but also learning how to deal with stakeholders and learning how to deal with the marketing part and the sales part, you can really provide a lot of leverage to the company and move fast. So that was very nice that I could do that there. And it was great for my growth. Yeah.
And a lot of knowledge that you can still use today in your own startup, of course.
That I am still using today. Yeah.
Exactly. And after Pararius, you joined Antler, one of the biggest startup accelerator experiences that is out there. Every year they get thousands and thousands of applications. You got selected. What was that process like?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question indeed, because to speak to so many people that are interested or have been in Antler or want to go to Antler, and they always ask, hey, how does the process work? There is no one process. I applied to Amsterdam, to the Antler Amsterdam, but Antler is in 27 cities in the world. And they are, by the way, the most active seed investor in the world as well. They have now done 600 investments. I think their goal for 2030 is 6,000 investments. So that's a lot of investments per year, if you think about it. And, basically the application process was the following. My mentor noticed that there was this open position, and he thought, hey, this is what you need to do. And so I looked at it and I thought, hey, this is what I need to do. I learned a lot at Pararius, but I was always with my eye on entrepreneurship, right? I always like to work long hours as well, work on my own side gigs and in all different technologies to keep up to date and that stuff. And so I thought, hey, let's go for it. So how the Antler application process works is you basically apply and then you get a call. If you even make it to the next screening, then you have a interview session where you're basically asked about your life, why you want to apply to Antler, why in the hell would you like to apply to Antler, why do you want to be a founder, and then also basically some questions about business itself. Some cases, I was presented with some cases about expanding Uber to Europe. And then there is an assessment. Also further, there is a second call, and then you hear if you can go to Antler or not. And some people have an idea, so there is an idea team. Some people even have the whole team already, right? And they go through a different process. I didn't. I was like most of the people that went to the cohort, just a founder looking for another founder. And I went through that process. Now, it was very funny because I think who was managing the process was Matteo Fortunato Condello. He still works in Antler, and we're from the same hometown. And we both speak Italian. So I remember when we had this phone call, he was excited because I was the first out of 300 applicants to be accepted for that batch. So candidate number one. And I was excited because I thought, hey, this is very nice that I can go to the next step. And so it was this phone call where it was 2 words of English and 1 word of Italian. It was very funny. And it was very, I got this phone call at 10 p.m. I was still in the office. That was great. And I think it was well organized. Yeah.
And why do you think you got selected in the process? Was it something you did, something you answered, something you knew?
Yeah.
Why?
That's very good. So I remember very clearly that I was being posed this question: why did you stop with your entrepreneurial life to work for Pararius? And like everybody at Pararius also knew, because I was made fun of because I would leave the office at 11 p.m. or I would come in at 6 or something like that. I always like to be busy with something else, right? Just to put my skills forth, of learn a different market and that sort of stuff. And so I got posed this question: hey, why did you stop with your entrepreneurial path to work for Pararius? And I said, well, I never stopped. And then the question was, well, when do you, how do you make it work then? And then my answer was, well, I would wake up at 5, do an hour of work, go to the gym, go do my 9 to 5, which I also like to work a little bit longer, of course, because it was very fun and a lot of impact. And then I would continue until it was time to go back home, right? And I think this is really one of the pillars that I look for is, do you have that grit? Do you have that, yeah, some people call it killer instinct. You can call it that if you'd like, to just really, go against the odds and work hard for what you want to achieve. I think that's a very big foundation. And also, I think they look for people that have good technical skills. I think those are rare at Antler. And I think, well, the odds were in my favor as well because of these two things. So that's...
Sounds good. And then you get into Antler and then the experience starts. What was that like? What did you learn there?
It was very interesting. For a bit of context, I will spend a few sentences on how Antler works. So they call themselves a zero-day investor fund. What does that mean? Well, you have pre-seed, you have seed, A, B, C, D, E, right? And Antler really wants to invest in the team. So they are less interested in the idea. Of course, the idea has to work, and they have to like it. But they're more interested in the core, the team. And this is why it's an 11-week process. In the first 2 weeks, there is sort of a get up to speed. It's nothing like a startup school. It doesn't have to do with YC Startup School. This is also what they tell you. Hey, if you want to learn how to build a startup, go to a startup school. But they give you some basics, like, hey, what are unit economics, right? What is organizational structures? How do you make a financial model? All these sort of things. And that's 2 weeks. And then the dating starts. Now, what is the dating? This is how we officially call it. Is 6,000 people apply on average, 60 people are selected, and these 60 people need to basically go around and mingle and find a co-founder. You can have a team of 2 people, 3 people, 4 people. That's where they draw the line. One solo founder is not great, but also a team of 5 is not great. And then you track out. So you basically compile an hygiene sheet, which is it's a fun discussion to have with someone. How much money do you have in the bank? How much money would you be ready to sell for, and this sort of things? And then Antler will tell you, okay, we think you can work as a team, so you can track out. That means that you start building. Or unfortunately, we don't think you can work together, so you can still work together, but that means you won't get any investment. And now I'm saying investment because after the 11 weeks, you get to pitch in front of an investment committee, and they decide whether you will get investment or not. And what we liked about Antler a lot as well is that it wasn't just, suspense pitch. We had pitch Fridays where we would always stand in front of everybody else and we would pitch our idea, and that makes you better and better and better. You can basically, I was dreaming about our pitch deck after a few weeks, right? So that was my Antler sign-up experience.
So, and how did you meet Marcel along the way?
This is a pretty interesting story because, funny enough, I did not meet Marcel. So you started 2 weeks of Antler with the idea of meeting a co-founder. I did not meet Marcel in Antler. Marcel wasn't in Antler at all. So I made a very interesting connection when Pararius bought a company called Pararius. Pararius was basically a startup that would help with KYC, I say between quotes, because it was to verify that the tenants in the real estate market were being truthful about the documents they provided. The real estate agents have something called duty of care. If they put forth a candidate to a homeowner, and this candidate is going to do a wheat plantation into the house, then they're liable. So what they were solving was, hey, upload your bank statements and connect your bank, and then we'll check that you actually have the salary you pay for. You say you have. Because a lot of people would just open Acrobat, fill in an extra zero every month, and that was your 12,000 ASML salary. And there was this specific example where this woman was just getting the benefits from the government, 1,000 euros per month, and she put an extra zero at the end. They would help against that. And Pararius is moving towards that part of the market as well, helping real estate agents manage their leads. And that was a key part, and so they acquired it. And I got to speak to Luis Perez, which was the founder of Pararius. And I was impressed because an M&A banker with an M&A banking background that is going through the code base with me during the due diligence. I was on the due diligence of that deal. I was explaining, we went for this part in the AWS cloud solution, and we went for this because of that. I went to this because then I thought, hey, but how come you know so much about tech? And I remember the answer he gave me was, well, I was working in M&A for tech companies, and if I knew a lot about tech, I had a competitive edge on my colleagues. So I found that to be great. It was pretty fun, and I think he's a bigger geek than me. So that was fun to see. And so we stayed in touch. And Luis had met Marcel at Rabobank. My co-founder Marcel worked at Rabobank for 23 years. Luis worked at Rabobank also for a good share of years, and they have met. And he had stopped working at Rabobank, and Marcel also had stopped working at Rabobank for a few years. Worked on another company, and then thought, hey, I want to build something that helps SMEs manage their cash. And Luis said, hey, let's do some research together. So they informally started working on PocketCFO a few hours per week, doing some research and making some landing page to see how people would react. And then I remember putting Antler on my LinkedIn, and I got a message from Luis, hey, what are you doing at Antler? Why? Because they were going to get investment for Pararius by Antler directly, not via the Antler program, if they didn't sell to Pararius. So that was such a by coincidence connection. It was pretty funny. Hadn't I updated my LinkedIn, or hadn't I updated my LinkedIn that day where it was on, then the connection would have never been made. And then what we did is we went out, we had dinner, and he said, well, we're working on this. We're looking for a good CTO. And I was impressed on the due diligence by how you were navigating through the code and whatnot. And why don't we organize a risotto night with Marcel? Right, and that's how we got to talk, and well, from there on it went pretty quickly.
Really interesting. Okay, so I think before we wrap up your Antler story, if somebody else wants to join Antler, what's a single piece of advice that you would give them?
Yeah, this is a very good one. So it's not a startup school, so expect to you should have some knowledge about building businesses, which you can gain. I don't want to gatekeep going to Antler. You can gain that, but nobody's going to hold your hand. So I can really recommend think about something, or think about the person you want, research what you should look for in a co-founder if you haven't had a co-founder before, and go in there very actively. Try to front load everything that you can and do it as soon as possible and get building. Basically, everything you can do to get that feedback early on, you should. Antler gives you this great tooling of having people there that can listen to you and can give you ruthless feedback about your pitch deck and the way you present yourself, but also your idea. Try to take it constructively because they're there to help, and try to assimilate as much info as you can. And that will ultimately help you either, well, get investment from Antler if you can have a killer pitch in front of the IC, but also really learn about your business, which will sound weird. You think as a founder, you know really well your business. I think the more you pitch, the more you get to know your business. And then that can help also from other investors or other sources of funding.
Okay. So, and after Antler, you continued on with Marcel. He's, I'd say, very different from you. He's a lot older. He's not a tech guy by any means. He's a very financial guy. He comes from a very corporate background, like you said, Rabobank. How does that work for the two of you, being such opposites?
I think this is what has made us successful so far. You know, one of the sentences I heard in Antler was, you're looking for a co-founder, you're not looking for a friend. This is deeper than it sounds, because you can definitely see it. Sitting in Antler, seeing how people would mix, especially because we were so many different nationalities. I think we were 20 nationalities or something like that, probably even more. You would see that people would go to the people that were similar to them, or you could really see that those people would look great sitting at a bar, but maybe less building a company together. And that was a great piece of advice, because friendship is based on common ground. Common ground is great for blind spots. Right. This is why also out of studies you want to have multiple cultures and multiple sexes on the ground, on the work floor, right? And with Marcel, the age difference, but also the culture difference, right? I think still to be said that I'm from Italy. I wasn't born in the Netherlands, right? So that's quite a southern northerner difference in culture. It helps us a lot looking at different problems from different perspectives, and also people's skills on slightly different areas, right? Also helps a lot. So yeah, I would say this is, I think, one of the reasons that make us a good team.
Sounds nice. Let's get on to PocketCFO a little bit more. You're positioning it as a digital business sparring buddy for entrepreneurs. It's not just another bookkeeping or accounting tool.
Exactly.
What makes it so special, and why do you believe in that so much?
Oh well, this is. I'm very happy you asked this question. So we went on the market. We did a lot of research. This was one of the positive things of Antler as well. Everything has to be proven. Hey, you think SMEs want help with finance? Where are the scientific papers of these studies? Which can be very frustrating from time to time, but it's also very helpful because you are kept objective. And so we did research. We calculated even the damage made by the lack of forward-looking finance help, which is billions of euros per year in the Netherlands only, and sort of fines paid and taxes, interest paid on tax, which they shouldn't have to pay, and this sort of stuff. Because we have very great tooling for compliance, right? Sort of process-centric compliance tooling instead of human-centric, forward-looking financial, suggestions, but also forward-looking finance in general. So let me give an example. You have, now I'm a user of eBoekhouder in the Netherlands, a bookkeeping tool for do-it-yourself entrepreneurs. It's great, but it's all based on process. I have to learn everything about eBoekhouder, how they do bookkeeping, how I need to input certain documents, and everything is a trigger based on what I do. There's nothing coming my way saying, hey, maybe you should do things like this, or hey, you're spending a lot on cloud, right? Your profits are going down every month by 10% because you're spending so damn much on cloud, and all these sort of things, which is very helpful, especially if you're starting out for yourself. Now, SMEs that also don't do their bookkeeping, right, which is a lot of those. It's more than 500,000 in the Netherlands, which is a small country. They have a bookkeeper, and they ask two questions to the bookkeeper. Hey, I don't want any trouble with the tax authorities, so please, I want my tax declarations on time. And then they ask, hey, give me advice on how to run my business better. And it's not always, hey, the bookkeeper says you should do this. Or it's more, hey, sometimes I just want to have a chat. Like, hey, that extra 50,000 euros we earned this year that we didn't have last year. Should I now buy this machine, or should I wait next year to buy that machine? What do you think? Or hey, should I invest in a laptop now? Or because maybe I don't want to pay the Belastingdienst all that money, right? But right now, the bookkeepers are so busy, and they just give them back, hey, give me all the documents and I'll do a tax declaration for you, and this is it. Thank you. And so the entrepreneurs feel alone. They have no tool that helps them run their business better. They have no tool that helps them keep their business on track. And that's what we wanted to build. This is fundamentally the difference. So even Jort in the Netherlands, which is a forward-looking bookkeeping tool, it's not really forward-looking, is it? You need to input all your documents. There's a lot of manual work. And the spirit of PocketCFO is connect your bank and you're settled. You're already going to get value out of it and suggestions. And then you can do more. Connect your HubSpot, share your documents, share your invoices. And our vision is to go to a point where you really have a CFO in your pocket, right? Hey, I'm going into an investor meeting. Can you give me a graph of our profit margins this year per month compared to previous year on WhatsApp? And then you get an image back. Or, hey, how much VAT do I need to pay? Or how much money can I invest this year to stay in that tax bracket?
That sounds really exciting, because I use my own bookkeeping tools, and they're exactly what you said. They're very retrospective and show you everything you've done to date, but there's no forward-looking capabilities whatsoever. So you said in our pre-discussion, you believe SMEs are so important to the economy, and it's really your duty to help them, to help them to be better. Why is that?
Well, it's I think half logical and half emotional. I think there is nothing that makes me happier than to see that SME. We would see a lot of them in Antler. Antler is in Edge in Amsterdam South. If you guys happen to be around there, I recommend that building. Is very nice. And there are a lot of micro SMEs, right? And micro SME being less than 10 people. And you can see them working so hard. It's 7 p.m. on a Friday. These guys there's music, they're having fun, and they're working, and they're keeping customers happy, right? There's no corporate shenanigans like, hey, this text needs to be approved by legal, and it needs to wait to be approved because this person is on vacation, and we need all these stakeholders together, and then we need to go through that committee and that committee and that committee. Now these guys are getting the job done, and I think that's very inspiring to see. And I think that's also where the innovation starts, right? When you lean and mean, you can innovate a lot, and I think that's the emotional side, right? The logical side is I am grateful that I could work in an SME, even though it wasn't a micro SME, right? that speaking to the head of marketing, as an engineer talking about marketing strategy, as a manager going to sales and saying, hey, how do you think, what's our messaging, right? Even being the technical lead, that shouldn't have anything to do with sales, right? That gives so many chances to the youth or people getting into this job, especially in tech, which is such a fluid environment, right? So it's not architect, engineer, or how should I say it? Basically, engineer and builder, right? It really is mixed. If you're an engineer, you need to know a little bit about sales. You need to know a little bit about marketing. I think if I had started in corporate, I might have become really good at tech, but I wouldn't have gotten so many chances to go so quickly into marketing or to leverage my skills like that. And so it's purely, hey, let's hire the chances for other people to also have such a fluid path that they can learn so much and maybe themselves go into entrepreneurship, right?
And you're doing that for the finance part for them, which I think is really helpful. So we now have AI, and I know you're losing a lot of AI in PocketCFO. Yeah. How do you think that those things, AI and automation, are going to change the world, well, for finance or for SMEs over the next 5 years?
This is a good question. So how is AI and automation going to change SME finance in the next 5 years? Well, let me start by saying that my view on AI is, I think it's another .com era. Besides from billionaires being made now, it's pretty much a fundamental revolution. It's a piece of technology that we have had before. It wasn't as performant in this, but also it wasn't as marketed as this, right? So I think the leverage of AI is a lot in its marketing as well. You can really see, even with willingness to pay, if you say, hey, we have smart intelligence in our product that does this, this, and this, which then actually provides the real value. So it's not just a marketing gimmick, but the consumer very quickly learned to understand what that actually means. So even people that are not too technical, they now have that understanding of, hey, this is actually smart and running some smart algorithms on my data versus, oh, it's just basically some basic formulas in an over-glorified Excel sheet with some branding on it, right? How is finance going to change? Well, I believe that we're going way more from I will tell the computer how to do things to I will tell the computer what to do, what I want. Right? I will tell the computer what I want. In programming, you have imperative programming and you have declarative programming. And imperative programming means on this line you do this, on this line you do this, and on this line you do this. And that's called imperative because you're basically telling the how to the computer. You take this piece of memory, you put it there, and then you put it there, and then you multiply it. Then you have declarative, where you tell the computer, hey, I want this. And the computer figures out the how itself. It's the higher level languages like SQL, right? Or React is a declarative framework. I shouldn't say framework, I should say library. And I think this is the approach to computers is going to turn into this. Like, hey, I'm not going to go into Excel and type this formula and type this formula and type this formula because I know that that's that tax bracket and that's that tax bracket and that's tax bracket. But I'm going to say, hey, I want a VAT declaration. Can you make it for me? And then it will basically figure out the how itself. Now, how correct that will be in the coming years is another story. But this is why we're building PocketCFO, right? But this is what I fundamentally will see. And I think on the bookkeeping side, so on the SME side, you're going to see a lot of the how, or a lot of the what more than the how. Hey, I want to have a plan on how I can grow in that market, right? And let's say you have a central point where you have intelligence about your business, finance, but also sales and also contracts, legal, and all this sort of stuff. And say, hey, I want to expand in that market. How could I do that? And then you're going to have basically a network of systems that are going to look up market research data, your own data, and you're going to figure out a plan. And you can then talk about it with a human, or you can just, if you have experience in the field, apply yourself directly. For the bookkeepers, now one of the cores of PocketCFO is we don't want to get the bookkeepers out of a job. We don't fundamentally believe in that, right? But we want to help them a lot. There are a lot of inefficiencies now in finance. It goes from data entry. We spoke to some of our customers. They spend 17 hours a day doing manual data entry amongst the workforce. It's about 15,000 euros a month for a small office, right? This is eating their bottom line, basically. They could be much more efficient. In a market in the Netherlands, which is hungry for bookkeepers. Right now in finance, there are 73 job openings for one person that finished studying finance. Of course, these people, as Marcel always says, they're not going to go to the small bookkeeping firm around the corner. They're going to go to EY. They want to go to GT. They want to go to Deloitte, right? So then the entrepreneurs are left with what? With nothing. They're going to have to fight to find a bookkeeper that works in an inefficient way. What can we do for the bookkeepers? The bookkeepers want to move from doing the bookkeeping manually to giving advice. This is what they get energy from, but they don't have time for. Let's optimize all of the processes around the human, such that they don't need to do the how all the time, but they can focus on doing the what and keeping the lights on for all these businesses.
So cool. And that's really going to make a difference. I mean, my personal story, I had a bookkeeper 3 years ago. That was all manual. I sent my invoices. I never got to see even my own numbers. So once every quarter, they would give me a report.
Yeah.
I now have an online bookkeeping tool. So it's still my accountant that files all the, I sent them to my accountant, they file them, and I still get to see within a couple of days, and it's all manual work, like you said. So I do agree. There's so much that can be automated and made better in this world for SME entrepreneurs like yourself and myself. Nice. I'm really looking forward to this.
Oh, this is going to be so much fun. It's basically, let's stop using the meat computer. Let's use the real computer to do things, right?
Exactly. Okay, then let's go back into technology a little bit more. You talked about in our previous discussion as well about how tech can make you miserable. You compromise on all the wrong things instead of the right things. What did you mean by that?
Oh, I was speaking to a friend and they basically, they do cloud as a service, right? The business they've built pretty much is, hey, you're a startup or you're an existing business. Maybe you want to move from on-prem to cloud. We will completely do that for you, take that over. And I've heard stories, people getting basically €250,000 in AWS credits. The MVP being built on month 9, right? That was even more. Basically, I think they spent 90% of their credits. Not one customer touched that product. So it's not that you need to run GPUs. It wasn't an AI intensive product. It's not that you have you don't have 80 concurrent users, right? And what they did is they took that over and they managed to make the last 20,000 euros last for another year, right? With users using the product. So this shows how tech can pretty much kill your startup as well. And this is what I meant, but it's not just cloud. It's also you engineer things. What I look for in an engineer when I'm looking for some talent for PocketCFO is how well can you make good judgment calls when it comes to compromise. So compromise is core, right? We're engineers, we're not over-engineers. But also you don't want to compromise on important parts. And I think that's the engineer instinct. Hey, I know that this is going to come and bite me back in the bottom if I don't do it properly, right? And I know this one, I can just completely wing it because it's easy to rewrite. So this is one of the things that I think a good CTO should do, especially if you're a programming CTO, which should be in a startup. For instance, with PocketCFO, we started from the data model. We got the data model right. The database has to be designed properly. You don't want to have a lot of technical depth there. The backend had cool infrastructure we wrote. We didn't go for a framework. We went for a micro framework. We went for fast API because it's so simple. It gives you so much freedom. And then we have very strict rules. We work with a lot of code generation. And what we compromise on is the front end, because the front end is read. So I can just completely trash a page and rewrite it again within 2 or 3 hours. So that makes me go fast. And this is the result you get. Everybody we speak to, all the bookkeepers we speak to, they say, hey, you guys in 1 year have built so much. How's that possible? Right? If I go to my bookkeeping tool and ask them for something, it takes years and years. And of course, we're a startup, so that helps. But also compared to other starting businesses in the accounting industry, we're quite fast. And it's because of that, knowing how to compromise.
Making the right compromises, not the wrong compromises. Nice. Okay, and now you're the CTO. You started together with Marcel. You now also have a team that you've built. How do you actually balance your time? Because you have to spend time with Marcel and probably customers on products, right? Product market discussions.
Yeah.
What the product you're building, you have to still spend time hands-on yourself, making sure that you don't make the wrong compromises. You have a team to manage. How do you balance all three of those?
Well, if you get bored easily, then I recommend this position, right? Because basically 7 days a week, you're wearing 14 different hats, something like that. So it goes from, talking together with Marcel about product vision and how are we going to actually break that down into an agile process. How are we going to build the fundamentals of tech such that people don't need to worry too much about stuff that's not important, but they can only focus on the business logic, right? How are we going to market the product? How am I going to do employer branding to make us attractive to potential people out there? What people do I even want, right? It's for me, it was the first time hiring for a startup at this level. So that was also quite a journey to figure out. And then writing code. So what I can... and you can't always pull all-nighters because, again, sprint versus marathon, right? So startup is sort of in between. You want to have sprint spirits, but also keep the marathon in the back of your head. I think it's very important to block out in your calendar focus moments. This is what I started doing. In Google Calendar, if someone tries to book a meeting in my focus moments, it automatically gets rejected, right? And that is because I want to be into the flow state that I quickly mentioned earlier. I actually am such a guy that if I spend 10 hours in a day meeting people, I feel like I have achieved nothing during that day, which isn't really true, right? I mean, meeting is work and they're very important and this is basically your job. But I want to feel that I've built something. I think that will always be a constant with me. So I'm not going to have that every day. But if I plan some moments in my calendar where I can just have 6 hours where I'm just focusing on building and building, that works great. And another trick is pair program a lot with your employees because you're sort of killing two birds with one stone. You are yourself writing code. You are spreading knowledge at the speed of light in the organization. And you're faster also. So people think that pair programming makes a task slower to complete. It's actually not because you don't need to review the code afterwards. So that's great. That helps a lot. And then basically try to make people very responsible to the product. Share vision, share where you're heading towards, explain the why to the point that they ask you to stop explaining the why, right? And then they become autonomous people working on a project that they love. Yeah.
And you can spend your time, make sure that you can still do all three.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Nice. So, the other thing you said in our pre-discussion is you talked about non-regret moves. That's one of your principles. What are those? And can you give an example of one that worked really well for you?
Very well, yeah. So non-regret moves, what does that mean? This is tying back into the learn how to compromise. So there are certain things when building a product that you know for sure you're not going to regret. For instance, setting up two-factor authentication in our product. When we went for a solution that we chose for our auth, we started recording phone numbers in a well-prepared data model because we knew that we were going to go for two-factor authentication. So now going for two-factor authentication is basically turning on a few switches and building an extra screen, and then we're there. So try to identify early on what are it's the Moscow method. This is what I like to follow. So must have, should have, could have, won't have. And the non-regret moves are must-haves. Of course, you still have the prioritization issue, right? So I can have 1,000 must-haves in my head, and then nobody's touched the product after 11 months, and I spend 90% of my credits, and I don't want to do that. But you can very quickly, bounce it off your CEO, for instance. Marcel is doing sales the whole time. He talks to the customers, is very knowledgeable about what they want. But also, you should talk to the customers yourself and learn, hey, what are their pains and what are some non-regret moves you can do there when building a product. And it's usually about the big things. Like people are going to want to know what the balance is on their bank account. People are going to want to know every month how much they earn and how much they don't. It's like, I think Bezos spoke about this. He said people like to focus on what will change in the next 10 years when they build a company. And he focused on what won't change. So will people in 10 years want slower shipping with higher prices and lower quality products? They won't. So let's focus on faster shipping, low shipping cost and high quality products. And it's sort of the same, and you need to balance that. So you want to dare as well, but you want to build also the foundations that you know are going to be there for a long time. And that's when you don't compromise on. So a good data model that is also easy to expand. I will tell you one thing. We work with an aggregator to get bank transactions in. And they do a great job. They abstract 2,500 APIs from different banks into one API that we can integrate right in. they have their own data model. And I have my reservations about their data model. So we decided to build our own data model for a bank transaction. And we're very wary of which fields we promote and how we aggregate certain fields. And we have had a bunch of misunderstandings. We had to switch from different APIs from time to time. And if we didn't have our own data model, it would have been weeks of work in the beginning. But because we had our data model, it was merely another translation layer into the PocketCFO transaction data model. So then we could, like this, switch to a different provider, right? Same with cloud. Everything is, we could go to AWS in 2 weeks if we wanted to, right? These are the things you don't want to compromise on. And other things, those are regret moves that I built it. I shouldn't have. I wasted time. I regret it. If you can see that very possibly in your future, then perhaps you shouldn't do it.
Okay, no regret moves. I'll remember that one. So, Mart, thank you very much for being with us. I have one final question.
Right.
You've come a very long way from tinkering with Arduino 10 to founding your own startup, being CTO of a successful startup. If you have to give one piece of advice to a younger software engineer, programmer, somebody that wants to become a CTO over time, what would it be?
Oh, this is a very good question. I need to think about it for 1 second. Yes, if you're not afraid, you're not daring enough. So if you don't feel that you're right on the edge, am I going to be able to make this? Then you're not daring enough, especially in the early years of your career. If you're out there and you think, hey, should I go for it? Should I try this thing? Even with tech, this is how I managed to really get to know a framework. When I was 14 that I got into web, I was trying to build Instagram in PHP, basically with my stupid knowledge of basic PHP scripting. And of course I failed, but I learned so much. And it's the same when it comes to leading a team. Be clear, talk to people, but try to stay away from all these constructs like, hey, I should be this or I should be that. Try to be fluid and try to dare.
So you're not afraid, you're not daring enough.
Yes.
That's incredible. Thanks, Matt. It's been incredible having you on, and we'll see you around.
Thank you for having me, Mark. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. As we wrap up another episode of the CTO Compass, thank you for taking the time to invest in you. The speed at which tech and AI develop is increasing, demanding a new era of leaders in tech. Leaders that can juggle team and culture, code and infra, cyber and compliance, all whilst working closely with board members and stakeholders. We're here to help you learn from others, set your own goals and navigate your own journey. And until next time, keep learning, keep pushing, and never stop growing.